Good afternoon. Welcome to the seventh, I think it is, broadcast for all people, not just NICEFA members. Today we are doing a webcast on system issues when modifying your FAMS, when modifying your terms. I am joined today by Howard Leslie, our president, who will be speaking to you in just a moment, as well as Kelly Sinicola and Jessica Bonelli from Ferrilli, who will be doing the presentation. So at this point in time, I am going to hand it over to Howard. Howard, turn over to you.
Okay, thank you, Brian. And good afternoon, NICEFA members, and yet again, our guests. As was just mentioned, we opened this up to the community. So we had a relatively small population from outside of New York. So I'm actually going to say a big welcome from the person or people that are attending from Waco, Texas, and another big welcome to that person or people that are attending from Richmond, Virginia. I welcome everyone, but especially our special guests. So it's been 104 days since shutdown, yet we continue to prevail. This is the 7th COVID-19, so you're absolutely right, Brian. 7 is the number, COVID-19 related webinar that NICEFA is bringing with one more already in schedule, and that one will be on July 7th. That one will complement today's webinar, as it'll be good for anyone that's thinking about changing their fall terms, their term dates, or things of that nature. So that's going to be a person from the Department of Education going over semesters, quarters, non-term, term, standard term, etc. So those are all things you have to be maybe potentially reacquainted or acquainted with in order to prepare. So what is going to be discussed today is, if you're doing that, what technological changes you need to put in place. So I want to remind everyone that NICEFA membership ends on June 30th. Please don't forget to complete your renewal. And guests, if you like what you see and you want to become a NICEFA member and enjoy all the different webinars and other resources that we have, $70 will do it. That's less than $6 a month. So consider becoming a member. We'd be more than happy to welcome you from Virginia and Texas. So I want to remind everyone, or tell people that haven't heard yet, that again, the conference has been canceled, and we are going to be having a virtual conference on October 28th. Basically, the plan is to have 3 major sessions. That would be a HESC update, that would be a federal update, and a NASFA update, and we've also already been able to obtain the services of Justin Drager. So those will be 3 special sessions, plus we'll be having other conference-like activities between the sessions. So please, join us. And if you do not know, okay, this conference is for free. All you have to do is be a paid in full 2021 member, and you're into the conference after you've registered for it. But you will be allowed to register. There's no charge. As you've read, this Friday will be or I hope you've read, this Friday will be the 1st anniversary of the new NICEFA website. So please join us as we celebrate the website and as we celebrate NICEFA at our next and last virtual happy hour, which is this Friday from 4:30 to 5:30. I look forward to a very large turnout. Finally, I would like to thank Ferrilli Consulting for providing us with Kelly, and I hope I pronounced your last name correctly, Kelly Sinicola, who's today's presenter. Get ready to take copious notes, as Kelly is an excellent trainer. If your institution is thinking about changing those term dates, okay, you're in the right place at the right time. And don't forget to tune in on July 7th for additional similar information, but more federal technical rather than computer technical. So with all that said, I thank you for joining us as always and supporting statewide training. And I'm going to turn it now back to Brian to introduce Kelly. Thank you, everyone, and have a great training.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Howard. All right, I'd like to introduce Kelly Sinicola. Kelly has 15+ years of experience in higher education. She started her career at Northwood University, where she provided support to Colleague, WebAdvisor, Helpdesk, and Microsoft Suite. She has also worked with the Recruiter CRM since its infancy. From implementing, configuring, training, and supporting, Kelly has experience in all facets of the CRM product. With her time at Ferrilli, she has experience in supporting every module of Colleague and providing training for functional and technical users, developed solutions to automate and enhance manual processes, and led advanced teams, and now oversees the entire Colleague and CRM practice as Executive Vice President. Kelly, I'd like to thank you very much for doing this. I'm going to turn this over to you just before she starts. This is a recorded webinar, so it will be available to all of you as we go along. Kelly, I hand it over to you.
Oh, thank you very much. That bio made me tired, but it's very nice to meet everybody today. For those of you that I don't know, and we also have Jessica Bonelli on as well. She is our Northeast account manager. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the question window, and we will try and get back with you as soon as we can. Just for bandwidth reasons, I'm going to turn off my webcam. Okay, so we're going to get started. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask those in the chat window. Everybody's already been muted, and the recording will be available on the NICEFO website after the presentation. So we wanted to start off with a poll. We find that there's a lot of interesting information we can pull from these polls, so we try to include them in each of our webinars. So what ERP do you use? Is that the Banner, Colleague, Genzabar, PeopleSoft, or another system? If you are using another system, feel free to share that in the question window.
Okay, and we have that poll up, and just let me know when you're ready to take it down.
Okay, we'll give that a few seconds.
And,
Okay, this is Howard. I'm sorry, Brian, but I think you brought it up, but didn't launch it. I'm not being able to respond.
oh, I hit launch.
Try again.
And people are responding.
Okay, so it's just me. Never mind.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, how do the respondents look? Like Howard, I can't see it on my side.
I have 74% of our viewers have responded, 81%, so quite a bit.
Okay, how about we close that and let's see what everybody said.
Okay, here we go. And you can see that, right?
I cannot, so if you want to read that off, that would be great.
Oh, sorry about that. All right, so Banner users were 67% of our people. Colleague is 18%, and then we have 13% were other, and 3% were PeopleSoft.
Wonderful. So today we're going to be covering some general concepts over things from any ERP perspective that you want to think about as you're considering this change. And we're going to go into specifics on the Banner and the Colleague side as well on specific mnemonics and screens that you have to be concerned about. So a little something for everybody here. So today we're going to be talking about managing semester date changes due to the COVID-19 crisis. As all of you, I'm sure, are pondering right now on your campuses or from home. So there's a number of reasons why campuses are considering this. The first being concern over a second coronavirus wave. So we're seeing people think about cutting back, extending, starting early, changing how their normal term structure is structured on campus. For some, it's to maintain social distancing, so changing the modality of the courses, offering half online, half in person. To reduce the breaks to limit exposure, so not returning back after Thanksgiving break, for example. And staggering classes in order to maintain time for cleaning. That was something that came up where instead of having 10 minutes in between individual course sections, the school wanted to have a half hour so they had time to fully sanitize that classroom in between section meetings. So how are people doing that? So starting earlier and ending earlier. In some cases, we've heard of schools starting 2 weeks earlier so that they can cut off 2 weeks off the end. Starting later, then adding additional semesters. We've had some schools interested in going from semesters back to quarters, for example, which having been through a terms to semesters conversion a few times, I didn't think I was ever going to see people wanting to go back, but that's something that COVID has brought to the table. And then also adding additional instructional methods. So if it was an on-premise face-to-face class, changing it to be online, changing it to be half and half, and adding different options to the faculty as they're providing that instruction to students. And so there are many things to consider. First, are there new students in this term? Because that's going to change how those new students are treated on the database. Are there transfer credits that need to be adjusted? Those transfer credits become really important when calculating aid. Are the course sections created already? In most cases, we are in June. I have to convince myself by looking at a calendar every time I say that, but we are at the end of June already. So in most cases, those course sections have already been created for the semester that we're changing. Has the offering information been completed? So have we already set up those course modalities? Have we already added the faculty members? Will the contact hours be affected? This is important for accreditation purposes as well as some financial aid purposes. Do you have to set up and create new instructional methods so those can be attached to the course section? Will there be additional fees because of this approach? So for some institutions, they're looking at adding on fees to support that online learning environment. So adding, trying to divide up the license fees for something like an LMS. For some, fees are going down. So if it was something where they had fees attached to each section, I always like to refer to basket weaving. So if we were charging them for the basket weaving materials and now they have to pick them up themselves, how are we adjusting those fees? Does this affect faculty pay and union contracts? I know a number of our clients and our partners are looking at having those union conversations now with their faculty because some of the faculty are reluctant to come back. And so that has to be negotiated as part of their union contract. Are students registered for this semester? And if they are registered, have they been billed? So billing adds another complexity to how many things you have to adjust when thinking about semester dates. Will due dates and late fees change because of the change in dates? So for example, if you said that everybody owed for fall semester the first week of August, and now we aren't starting until October, are we making those adjustments and are we communicating those effectively to our students? Are sponsorships in use for this semester? So if you have sponsors making their payments, you have to also think about their due dates and the start date and end dates of those sponsorships. Are there any meal plans or room assignments set up? If so, those also have dates associated with them that have to be adjusted in order for this to occur. There's also possible changes to if you are, let's say, stopping before Thanksgiving break and students aren't coming back, do you have to adjust the fees charged for those room assignments because they aren't staying on campus as long as they would have previously? And were the meal plans billed and were the room assignments billed, or do you have to adjust those billings? You also have to think about if there's students on hiatus. Hiatus has implications with the clearinghouse and the clearinghouse reporting. Each of those things are also associated with dates. Did you have to set up any waivers for this term that you're making these date adjustments on? And are there restrictions for students this semester? Generally, restrictions are also associated with a start date and an end date. And if you're moving those things, you have to make sure your restrictions are adjusted at the same time. If you do have your students use registration appointments and they haven't registered for courses yet, have you thought about the implications for making sure that they can get on and register in a timely fashion before you want classes to start? And then a lot of schools go through a deregistration process for students that have not yet paid their bill. And so have you thought through the calendar of those changes with your registrar, with the financial aid office, with the business office to make sure that everybody's in alignment on when that process should occur? And if you have any rules from a colleague perspective or any pop cells from a banner perspective that have hard-coded dates, So I see those often associated with billing, sometimes associated with financial aid. And so if they have dates in them, then they have to be adjusted to meet the new normal. Now, if billing has occurred, have you thought about the other implications on the other side of things on the general ledger? So in the financials modules, those are also all date driven. And that can impact any historical reporting if you're trying to compare August to August, for example, and now aren't starting at the same time. Also, do you have any integrations that are date and time driven? This could be something like a scheduling platform, a room assignment platform. All of those things are generally date and time driven as well, and you have to make sure that those updates are pushed. And then have students been awarded financial aid, right? Especially for this group, most important, a lot of schools have pushed for earlier and earlier awarding of student financial aid. And so we have clients that start in October of the previous year. And so you have to think about any disbursement dates, any award periods, and all of those have to be adjusted to make sure they're in alignment with whatever's being planned for those academic term changes. And so now we have an opportunity for a second poll. And so the question is, where does your institution fall with the strategy decision? So are you choosing to adjust your start and end dates for the fall semester? Are you adding additional semesters in? We've seen some schools opt to have multiple spring semesters, maybe broken up a little bit differently, just so it doesn't affect fall. Are you adjusting your summer semester? And if it's something different, feel free to put that in the question window so that we can share with the constituents here what the campus is planning.
Okay, we have that launched. And they're coming in fast and furious.
Whenever I launch a poll, I think of it as a race. Oh, they're pulling it.
Well, so far the adjusting start end dates for the fall semester is the big leader. We're at about 56%. We'll give it just a second longer here. It seems to have pretty much stalled out though. Got a couple more. And looks like we're done at about 60%, so we'll close that up. And looks like I say, the big winner was the top one, adjusting start end dates, was at 62%. The next one, something different, down at the bottom for 28%. And we have shifting fall, spring, and summer dates. And another one is our campus is still deciding. Mm-hmm. And then at 7%, we have the second one down, additional semesters. And then at 3%, the adjusting summer semesters. So like I said, big winner is the top one for right now.
Thank you, Brian. And I definitely empathize with everyone that's still making these decisions. We've all had a lot to face during this strange season of our lives. So, you know, from CARES Act funds to semester changes, all things that we didn't think we'd have to deal with before. So now comes the technical sort of part of this webinar. We're going to talk about colleague specifics and banner specifics, so specific screens that you have to look at. If you're on PeopleSoft or Genzabar or something different, maybe PowerFades or something like that, you know, we could help you separately if you need any pointers, so feel free to reach out. I will warn you, being a former PowerPoint instructor, these are very wordy slides, so I apologize in advance. So there's a couple different approaches to think about, specifically for the Colleague database. Those of us that know and love Colleague know that there are lots of dates just littered across the database. And so you have to think about if students have registered and have been billed. If they have been billed, then one approach is to drop everyone from all of their sections, keeping track, of course, of who has been registered previously. Then also remove everyone from housing, which is meal plans and room assignments. There is now a utility released from Ellucian that can adjust the meal plans and room assignments, so those may not have to be dropped. Then you can run the billing process to reflect that being taken off of their statement. Update the dates in Riot, which is the term screen. and then re-register everybody because you kept track of it. It kept diligent records, and you register everybody in those sections that already had their dates updated, and then you rebill. Now this is so that the billing dates match the semester dates, the section dates match the dates, and everything comes into full alignment. So all the dates are updated, but it does lead to a messy academic history on the stack screen. Billing statements, which can also already be complicated for students to review, also start to get really cluttered up with this approach. A second approach is to create utilities to update all of the dates affected. This does result in updated dates, which is the goal, but it requires extensive testing. And as we know, anytime we make a change at the database level, we want to make sure that we can see it in all of our mnemonics and none of our processes that we're working through on those screens are adversely affected. Whether you go with approach A or approach B, they both require updates to financial aid. And so you have to think about your award period updates on AWPD and your disbursement date updates, and you can use DCTL to update those in batch, which is important. And now there's different mnemonics to review. If you use a different system outside of Colleague, you can think about what screens are applicable on your system. There's riots, and you have to detail into the ACTM mnemonic, and that's where it holds a lot of dates. So it's the start date and the end date of the semesters. It's also the billing dates, any override dates, census dates that are used for financial aid. Then SACP and STAL. So if you do have new students that are starting up, the start date of when they actually started is now going to change if you're updating the dates of the fall semester. And so you'd want to update that so all of your reporting remains accurate. If you have any transfer credits that were entered on the EXTL mnemonic, the start date and end date, as soon as you entered that transfer credit, or anybody on your campus, that would have defaulted in from the term that was selected when entering that credit on EXTL. So if you update the term, it's not going to update EXTL automatically, and you'd have to think about if you want to make that adjustment. There's also override dates on the RGSD screen, and that's for sections that fall outside of the normal. Then on SOFF, which is the offering info for the course section itself, that has the meeting information, and SECB, which has the billing information for the section. You have to look at your contact hours, your instructional methods, and any fees associated with the section if you're an institution, like I mentioned earlier, that is adjusting fees because of changing these dates on the semester. If you are a school that utilizes sponsorships on Colleague, there's also a start and end date associated with those sponsors and sponsorships, and that defaults in from the term as well. MPAS is where you set up meal plan assignments, and those have a start date and an end date. So in the first approach, if you were dropping everybody from their meal plans and then re-adding them, it would default in with the fresh dates. And the same goes for room assignments on RMAS. Now, when you run billing, like we said, that's one of the major caveats on what's going to help determine your approach is if you've done billing or if you haven't done billing. And that's because there's a number of underlying tables that have lots of dates. One is for residence life billing, and there's meal AR postings tables and room AR postings tables, and each of those have dates that are defaulted in from the term. There's also the shift screen for hiatuses, and if you do have any students on hiatuses, those dates would have defaulted in from the term that they're currently on hiatus for. Then there's also PERC, which has the restrictions for the students. If a student's on restriction for the fall semester and you entered in the dates for the fall semester, then that restriction is also going to have to be updated. Those can also be updated in batch through the ACDR screen. That screen has also very recently been updated on June 11th by Ellucian, so it can be run in background mode. So something to keep an eye out for on your campus. Then there's also student petitions that have start date and end dates associated with those records as well. There's also registration appointments. That's on the RGPR screen. And like I mentioned, if you're moving your semester forward or backward, you're going to think about the appointments and when the students actually have an opportunity to register for those sections. DREG, you want your schedule cleared with financial aid. the bursar's office or business office, and your registrar's office to make sure that you're dropping students appropriately. RLDE, so for rules on Colleague, you want to make sure there's no hard-coded dates. Usually I see those associated with billing and running billing automatically in the background. Then on the general ledger side, the Colleague financials records are actually, each record on the Colleague financial side has 2 dates associated with it, a system date and a posting date. So those dates are going to be adjusted with these new term dates as well. Then of course you want to take care of your award periods. So your award periods are associated to your academic terms and have start dates and end dates that are reflective of those academic terms. So if you're changing those, the award periods don't get updated automatically. And also the disbursement dates associated with any aid on ADCM. And like I mentioned, you can batch change those and update those on the DCTL screen. Now there was very recent functionality released in the June 11th bundle for Ellucian software updates. There is a new batch update section information mnemonic that was delivered, and it's a process to change course section attributes. It includes updates to the grade schemes and sub-schemes, the path and no path policies, the section start and end dates, and the instructional methods. That was released on June 11th. So if you don't have that installed, you may want to check with IT and see if that's an option on your campus. There's also a term date change report that's a brand new release. It's called TDCR, and it reports on the potential impact of changing term dates. So it's a mnemonic that you can bring up. You say what term you're looking at changing and the start date that you're changing it from and to. And it's going to create a report and save list on things that are going to be impacted by that change. Now, it's not going to include everything in this presentation, but it does give you some insight now into things that you have to update, whether you choose to update it manually or through a routine. And I will say on the Colleague side at Ferrilli, we've created some utilities to update those data pieces as well as we work with our client partners to make this as efficient as possible for campuses. Now we're going to work through some banner specifics. So being used to Colleague mnemonics, the banner ones are just longer. So on STV term, you would want to update your start and end dates there, much like we were talking about with the Colleague Riot screen. There's the housing start date and end date on there, as well as the actual start date and end date of the term. Then SOA term, there's the effective date, the cutoff date, and then you have to review the part of term and web registration controls tab for all of the dates that are listed on that tab. Also census dates, enrollment dates, academic history dates, refund dates, and drop dates. All things that you want to think about changing as you make these changes on campus. SFA ESTS is used to update dates for the enrollment status codes and refund rules. So you're going to want to update the dates associated with each of those status codes and refund rules on that screen. Now there is the SFAR STS screen to update dates for each registration status code and refund rules. So much like with the enrollment statuses, you want to look through each of your registration status codes and your refund rules to make sure any changes that are applicable to those codes are made. On SFAR GFE, you want to review dates for assessment rules. SSA SECT, that's where you're going to find dates for your course sections, your registration dates, your census dates, and your meeting times and dates. That's similar to SOFF on the Colleague side. Then on SFR AREG, if your registration already exists, so this is if your students have already registered for sections, then you have to use custom scripts to update the reg records for start date and completion dates. So this is something that you would want to script against the database if students have already registered for the semester that you're changing, whether that's fall, spring, or summer. Then on ROR PRDS, you want to update your term dates there as well. ROR TPRD, there's also term dates there by aid period. So look at that for each aid period. And SOA TBRK, We'll update your break days for R2T4 calculations. This is really important as schools look to say how they're going to deal with Thanksgiving break. So there's a lot of increased concern over letting students go home for Thanksgiving break and possibly bringing back any infections to campus. So you want to think about your break days, and in all the meetings that everyone's having over Zoom or GoToMeeting, think about how that impacts your R2T4 calculations. Now, please note that break days, days attended, and percentage attended cannot be updated on the SFA WDRL screen. Those are calculated on that screen from SOATBRK. So you can go to that screen to see how it's set up, but just know that you can't make any updates there. And now we get into our direct lending screens. So on ROR SAYR, that if you have any direct lending say codes, you want to update your academic year, the start and end dates, and the disbursement dates on that screen. ROR BBay is for any direct lending BBay codes if you're a BBay institution. Then you want to update your cutoff dates on RPR OPTS. And take a look at your non-loan memo expiration disbursement dates by aid period on the RFR DEFA screen. If you have any non-loan fund specific memo expiration and disbursement dates, those would be looked at and updated on RFR ASCH. Now, if you are an institution that does private lending, RPR LPRD for your private loan start and end dates, and your disbursement dates for all of the related aid periods. So think about how your aid periods are set up and how your new semester dates are set up. If you have non-loan funds that have already been awarded, you can use ROR Post and ROR PBST to update those disbursement dates for already awarded funds. If you have direct loans that have already originated, then RLPDLOC and RLPDLUP will be used to update those dates. If you use alternative loans, or if you have students that take advantage of the alternative loan program, you'll want to manually update any scheduled dates for those loans on RPALDSB. And then, just like we talked about with Colleague and the items to review, think about your billing dates and your due dates and make sure that, if you're starting later, starting earlier, that your due dates are reflected in that. And that's on the TBRA CCD table, and you can create a script to update those dates. Now there's some optional modules in Banner that you also want to review as part of this change. If you use open learning, refund by total, time ticketing, registration management controls, gradebook, attendance tracking, the drop roster or calculated drop functionality, and location management. There's also dates in those optional modules as well, and you'll want to review those as part of the process of changing over your dates for the semester. Now, other considerations to think about as these meetings are occurring, or maybe as you're making these changes on campus. Will the term change cause your financial aid budget components to change? So if you're thinking that the semester is going to be shorter, does that affect any of those components? For example, travel expenses, room and board expenses. If the term is shorter in days, or if it's longer in days, how does that affect those budget components? Because that's also going to affect your awarding, and you'll also have to make adjustments on that. If you use a scheduling tool such as Resource 25 or Ad Astra, then once all of these changes are complete, you want to make sure that you do a manual push to each of those tools to make sure that your schedule is in alignment with what your ERP system has. Also think about how you're reporting to the National Student Clearinghouse. Any of us that have worked with that process know that it's very date-driven. You're thinking about drops and adds and credit loads based on enrollment dates. So you'll want to take an extra close look at those processes as you run through this semester. Always think of the Department of Education and what impact that's going to have on your reporting to them, especially with the new implications of the CARES Act reporting. And also consider any accreditation bodies that you're working with. If you've made any changes to contact hours or course modality. You want to make sure and clear it with your accrediting bodies to make sure you don't run into any problems on your next program audit. Now there's a number of resources available from the Ellucian stack of products. They do have a community page on the hub for COVID-19, and that has Power Campus, Banner, and Colleague schools coming together to talk about what the implications are for COVID-19 on different things, everything from HR to CARES Act disbursements. The Department of Education has a dedicated page to coronavirus, and that has all of the updates around funding, issues to consider. And the National Student Clearinghouse also has a section where they've dedicated resources to supporting institutions through this time. And so that's at studentclearinghouse.org/coronavirus. So right now, if you have any questions, you can submit those into the question window.
All right, thank you very much. At this point in time, there are no questions, but we'll keep on the lookout here for just a second. And now, I guess I do have a quick question. I was looking at some of those screens while you were doing this. I'm a Banner school. Can you describe a little bit about, if you can, that RLP DLUP process? I can update, because I've never had to do this before, I can update all of my necessary dates through that process?
You can, and that's really nice, where you don't have to go in through disbursement date to disbursement date, student to student, to make those updates. You can use that to push that update across the student system, which is nice.
Well, that's fantastic. I like when I learn something new.
Well, and I really think that on the Banner side, like I mentioned, Ellucian pushed out that software update on June 11th, so that was just 2 weeks ago. For the Colleague side, I anticipate maybe some new functionality coming across on the Banner side as well.
Fantastic. Well, at this point in time, there are no further questions. So I guess at this point, if there's anything else that you'd like to let us know. Okay.
We're trying to do the best that we can during this time to share with the community, just like NICE was doing. So we do have a What's New page. Feel free to check it out.
All right. Well, I guess that's what we have for today. I do thank everybody for attending. This webinar will be available on our website in just a little bit. We'll be getting this processed and out there. Once again, I do want to thank Jessica and Kelly for joining us today. And if you have any questions, you have their website. You can go out there and certainly ask any questions that you would have. And you can also, well, wait a second. We do have a question that just popped up. It says, what screen and banner would we use to update the new loan origination dates that came out? Maybe that's the new loan origination fees that came out.
Right, is that for the fees or the dates?
Yes, fees, she said. So they're just wondering where they update those fees.
I will have to take a look. I will email that one to you, Brian.
Okay, that'll be perfect, and I will get that out to her.
Thank you.
Actually, I'll send it out to all of the attendees in case they're wondering. All right. Well, fantastic. I really appreciate your help and everything that you've showed us, and we will talk to both of you very shortly.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Take care, everybody.